Nathan Cox, thanks for doing this around the home. Okay, here I'm going to do the ultimate toilet rebuild video series. So some of you might be asking, wait a second, the toilet's already apart. Well, yes it is. This is a remodel that I'm working on for the last few months. Very, very old bathroom. Toilet's not ancient, but could definitely use a rebuild. So we're going to do a complete 100% rebuild of the toilet. Yes, it's already been taken up, but I think we can work around that just fine. Oh, and if you guys didn't already notice, I have chapters in this video. So they're in the description, but even better, they're in the timeline, okay? So if you're like, I don't need this part, or I need to go back and check that part again, you can jump back and forth, whatever you guys need to do, chapters are there for you. So for those of you wondering, where do we get these parts? Which ones do we use? I will have Amazon links in the description down below for all the kits that we're using, plus some of the tools. And we are Amazon affiliates. So using those links helps support the channel. It doesn't cost you a penny to do so. All right, so please click those links. Click. Fluidmaster 400A for the fill valve. I have a flush valve rebuild kit here, also from Fluidmaster. I like this one here. It's got some things in it that's really nice, including, it includes its own wrench to help take that giant nut off the bottom. I've got a Fluidmaster Perfect Fit flush lever. I do have, this one's from Danco. Okay, I got it at Lowe's. I think I had it on clearance or something, so I think that's why I jumped on it. But I have used these once before, so this isn't the first time. But this one is a combination. Some of them are completely waxless. Other ones, they have like a bunch of rubber seals. But this one here, right up against where the toilet flange is, it still has a wax base ring built into it to help it lock into that flange. Kind of interesting, kind of a hybrid. You know, whatever, but there we go, that's what we're using today. And last but not least is our supply line, okay? So this is a pretty standard stainless steel braided supply line. Okay, so what tools are we gonna need for this project? Well, luckily the project doesn't require too much for specialty tools. And since I got the toilet split and we're gonna do the whole flush valve system, I do have a pretty standard small ratchet set that has deep sockets. Not a requirement. You can use a pair of pliers and screwdriver, but this is definitely gonna make it a lot easier. Have the ratchet set. Okay, I've got a straight and Phillips screwdriver, very basic. I have a small adjustable crescent wrench and a pair of slip joint pliers, okay? This is a staple for just about any plumbing project. And like I said a little earlier, there is a wrench for the giant nut on the bottom of the tank in that kit. So I don't have like an exercise wrench, but if you got a kit to rebuild like the flush lever and it doesn't have that wrench in there, you either need a pair of slip joint pliers that are gonna open up like really big, or even a pipe wrench. And I've used like a 14-inch pipe wrench, and I have to stretch it out to the very last thread. But you can still use that, yeah. So let's get started in disassembling the tank, or at least what's left of it, because this has already been mostly done, but I'll explain any pieces that are missing as we go. So I'm gonna open up this kit here and get that wrench out to start off with. And here we go. It's a pretty handy wrench, and it's even got two different sizes on it. So let's just get to it, right? All right, so here's a tank, and you can see we're already missing the flush lever, okay? Flush levers are super easy to take off. There should just be a nut on the inside. Now the only thing that I need to tell you about that is it's a left-handed nut, okay? So we're not talking lefty-loosey, righty-tighty, it's the opposite of that. Now the flush valve, the fill valve, I'm sorry, okay? That hole right there in the corner, yeah, that one there, trying to get the right angle. All right, so it's already gone. So once you take off the supply line off of it, there's just a nut holding it in place. Whether you're replacing another old Fluidmaster or Corky or even a really, really old school ball cock, they're all gonna have just a nut right here on the bottom. Take it off, push it out, and then we're good to go. So what we have left is the flush valve unit system, which has the overflow tube, the flapper attached to it. And that is all being held in place by this nut right here. And there's normally a big foam seal over this, okay? So just pop the foam seal off, toss it to the side, and now here we are. Okay, and that foam seal, especially if it's black, will definitely bleed that black all over the place. So you might even grab a paper towel or something and pull it off. And this is clean water here. This is the tank, okay? Unless you take the lid off and decide to take a poop inside the tank, which I'm sorry, you need some professional help if you do that. This is all clean water, so don't worry about this part. All right, and just to prove a point, this is a very standard pair of slip joint pliers that I've used for years. As you can see, they are not big enough to grab the nut. I can just, if I open them all the way, I can kind of grab the lips right there of two edges, but they don't grab it right. So seriously, that's why this wrench here is really nice. Okay, now we should just pull it on out. And there is a second seal you'll see right here, which goes between the flush valve unit and the tank, and then the other seal goes, on the bottom side of the tank. And a lot of times the plastic can get really brittle here, so some people might be asking, is there another reason to replace this other than that foam seal maybe going bad? This plastic does get brittle over years, and I've seen someone flip that flush lever hard and actually snap this off. My neighbor actually did that to my toilet a couple years ago, believe it or not, okay? So yeah, it doesn't hurt just to get rid of all this. All right, so I guess maybe it doesn't quite matter if you start with the fill valve or the flush valve, but we're gonna start with the flush valve because that just seems like the right thing to do. So here we go. Here is part of the seal that goes between the tanks. This one here has a multiple system depending on the exact brand of your toilet. This is probably what you're gonna be most likely running into. You've probably already seen this there. And here's the main unit right there. And we have a bag of bolts and nuts. Now I'm going to try to make this the easiest, most straightforward installation video you're going to find. So to help simplify things, we're just going to pop off the flapper and get rid of it, okay? Just snaps up off these two little arms, okay? And we're going to set it to this side. Okay, so here we go. Here's our nut that goes on the bottom side of the tank. So we're going to take that off. All right, take our cardboard ring, okay, we're actually going to save that as a washer for the nut on the bottom side. And then we have the top rubber seals already in place and good to go. And then this one here is pretty nice because to adjust the height, which we'll talk about exactly how to do that and why we do that, you just kind of turn it to the side and it can go up and down like so, and then turn it back and it locks. Okay, so this is actually a really nice, easy system to use because the older ones used to just have a long tube and then you had to cut off the excess. So this way you just adjust it. Really cool. Okay, so here we have the tank again. And so we're gonna drop this down in the hole. Okay, trying to get the right angle. All right. And you see, all right, so you see with these holes here, those are for the bolts that go between the tank and the bowl. This here, we want to kind of have it angled like so, okay? The flush lever is right here, so the arm's going to be like this, and it'll lift up the flapper, okay? So kind of spun like that. I hope you guys can see that pretty well. We'll come back and review that after we get this on. So we're going to put the washer on, now we're going to put the nut on. Alright, and then we're just going to slightly snug up. Oh, okay, use the other side. We're going to snug up the nut. Not too hard yet, and then we're going to double check the position on the other side. Okay, I like the position of it. Noting over here, that hole there is where the fill valve is going to go. So you kind of see the angle that it's sitting at. But for now, we're just going to come back and tighten this nut up. of course you want to snug that down decently, but don't go crazy. No roiding out on that thing. Don't roid out on it. Oh. So we can, I mean, if you really want to, you know, the rubber seal will just sit like this on most toilets, okay? Now, if you had like a Kohler or possibly a Gerber, this might have actually needed to go on before that nut, okay? And then these little slips, they go inside the holes and they hold the nut. So they're actually kind of a cool system. And so it really helps that the cardboard washer is not so much necessary for just this install, but it is absolutely important for this one here so that nut can slide without just grabbing the rubber and spinning it, okay? But I have a very typical toilet with a 2-hole mounting system, okay? So that's where we are. All right, now what about the hardware? Okay, so we're not going to assemble the hardware just yet. Now this has got, and these are nice heavy duty bolts, okay? Some of them are a lot thinner on different kits, but we only need 2 of them, so we'll take 2 out. And then we're gonna take 2 rubber washers, 2 metal washers, and 2 nuts, and then we're gonna set the rest to the side. All right, now the nuts and the washers we're also gonna set this side, but in very close by, because they'll go on the bottom of the, well, they'll actually go under the flange on the bowl, okay? But to go ahead and prep these and get these ready, we're gonna take the rubber washer and just feed it on the bolt. Okay, so that part is pretty easy right there. Okay, now let's move on to the fill valve. Okay, even though we haven't mounted the tank to the bowl, which can be done at any time here, I'm going to pull this apart and assemble it so I can get the angles better for you guys, because some of my other videos, the hardest part was just getting the angles right, okay, right? So let's see what we got inside here. All right, so this is pretty simple. We have the main fill valve here. It's already got the washer on it, okay? We've got the hose that goes to the overflow tube, and then we got a nut and a connector for the overflow tube. There's also the instruction booklet, but that's it. We're done on this box. Now, if you've got a fill valve here, and it originated from certain states, especially California, which have very, very strict water laws, there's probably an insert inside here, a restrictor, which is really ridiculous because the toilet's gonna fill up to the proper amount no matter what. The restrictor just slows it down from getting there. There's too many restrictions on toilets. Toilets need to have a good strong flush because you gotta get all that crap out of the toilet and then down the pipes, out from underneath your house into the street, okay? And if you don't have enough water, it ain't making it that far, okay? So it looks like a white, kind of a rubberish corkscrew. I wish I had one. I had saved one out of one a while back I got. And then I lost it, of course, before the video, right? All right, and this used to come separate in a little bag, but now I guess they got it right there on the stem. But let me show you the craziest, coolest trick with these ever. All right, before I explain the trick, let me kind of explain what's going on here. So we have the stem, and then we have the upper tube, you know, and the actual valve up here, okay? So when it's in the toilet, you have the fine adjustment, which is this screw here, or the coarse adjustment, which is this here. If you screw out the stem, it'll screw it way up, and then you can adjust the height, right? Check this out. You see this locking ring right here? So if you pop the locking ring up, and sometimes, especially on the very first time you take it apart, it can be a little stiff, but just give it a yank. Okay, that one actually came apart pretty nicely. Yes, that's a very cool trick, and I've done this so many times. So not only, so some of you are thinking right there, I know. I can see you in the back, yeah. You're like, wait a second. If I have one of these and it failed, but nothing else is leaking, can I just pop that ring, pop this off, turn the water off to the toilet first, of course, because if you were to do that, now you have a water jet, a geyser in your bathroom, okay? So if you turn the water off to your toilet, but if you pop the ring, pull that off, can you just take the brand new one and stick it on an old stem, lock the ring, turn the water back on, and you're good to go in like 1.34 minutes? Yes, yes you can. I don't know where the 1.34 came from, it just sounded good. But even if you're not doing that, I still like to take this off because I just find this is a lot easier to install and hold still rather than trying to hold on to this thing here. So I just take this off and work with this. So what we're gonna want this white nut out of the bag right here. This holds on the bottom of the stem there. This little guy here attaches the hose. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay, now since this is just a stem, it doesn't matter which direction it's spun when you stick it down here in the hole in the tank. I'm trying to do this in the screen in there. There we go. Since that washer is beveled, it should really find the center point of that hole pretty easy. Okay? And then we're just going to tighten this probably by hand. All right. Now you can, if you have weak hands, you can kind of snug it up and then put a pair of pliers on there and then tighten it like another quarter turn with the pliers. That's okay. Just don't tear up these threads here. Just make sure that the pliers stay on this nut. Okay. And then I always like to say, if you can reach in here and grab the stem and try to turn it, if it doesn't turn, good to go. All right, man, you guys might think I'm crazy, but I'm not gonna finish assembling that fill valve just yet. We're going back to the flush valve and assembling the tank to the bowl. I'm doing this in the way that's easiest to assemble so that there's the least amount of crap in your way, okay? So here we go, we're going to assemble the tank to the bowl. Okay, so we see the top of the bowl here, and we see 4 holes. Okay, these front holes are for the toilet seat, so these back holes back here are gonna be for the tank. And like I was talking about earlier, certain brands will have a third one, and then they would typically be back here, okay? This is the hole where the water goes between the tank and the bowl and gives you your flush. So if you followed along earlier through all the steps, you've already got the washers on the bolts here, ready to go. If you didn't, now's the time to slip the washers on. Okay, now is also the time to figure out which deep socket works these nuts real well. And for my kit, the 1/2 inch worked really well. Okay, so we're just gonna set the tank on there, lining up all the holes. Okay, at this point here, you should feel some resistance from that foam filter in the middle. Okay, it should feel like it's rocking there a little bit because it should be sitting up on that. All right, so that's a good sign if it is. Now we're just gonna take these bolts with their big rubber washers and drop them through. Boom, boom. Now while we hold the bolt in place, we're gonna get the nut started with the washer first. So washer first, and then the nut, of course. Okay, now while I'm holding these bolts from spinning, I'm gonna just use my hand in the socket to tighten it, snug it up first. And do it on both sides. Now we're gonna tighten it up with the socket. And this part here, you have to be careful because you can actually damage a few things with this. So first, I want to point out, you can see that, obviously there's the head of the bolt and the rubber washer. If you tighten this down too tight, you can actually flex that washer out from underneath the bolt, and then you're going to leak, okay? Also, if there's bad roughness on the tank here, these washers may just leak, period. So you're wondering, well, how the heck do I fix that? Well, after you take the nut back apart, make sure everything is totally dry. The ceramic and the bolt and the washer, like you might even let the ceramic sit out for a while. Then you can take some silicone, 100% silicone caulking, and put it in the hole and on the bottom side of the washer. And that has typically for me fixed any issues if there's a roughness to the ceramic or a lip or something that's not letting it seal right. Okay, so we're gonna snug these up. We're just gonna do like a 1/2 turn on one side and then a 1/2 turn on the other side because we don't want to obviously flex the rubber out, and if you go crazy and put this on an impact, you'll just split the ceramic and blow the tank, and that's it, then you're done. All right, now how do you check when you feel like you're getting pretty close? So you can start to see the head of the screws kind of being pulled into the rubber. You want to grab the tank and kind of wiggle it around. The tank should have a lip on the outside where it sits against the bowl of the toilet, and then when they clamp together, it should hold pretty tight. And looks like I'm already there, so I'm calling this good. Okay, next let's adjust the height of the flush valve overflow tube. Okay, so the overflow tube, what it does is, let's say that the fill valve gets stuck and keeps filling. We wouldn't want that to continue to fill and overflow all over the toilet, your bathroom floor, flood half your house, right? Of course not. So this here, okay, when the water gets so high, it goes in here and then it just goes into the bowl. And as long as the bowl is not clogged, when the bowl gets high enough, it'll just flush itself, okay? Super, very basic system, works really well. All right, now you're like, well, how high do I set this? What's the best height, blah, blah, blah. Well, you can already see, if this is an old toilet that's been rebuilt, you can kind of see the water line just really staying, okay? And a lot of them will have a little thing etched in here that says this is the max fill. And a lot of times that's based on what government regulations were instilled at the time this thing was manufactured. All right, now this, I may upset a few people, but I don't care. Toilets don't flush with enough power these days, okay? They need more water. I end up flushing my toilet many times to get it to flush right if I'm doing a number 2. You guys know what I'm talking about, okay? We're all adults here. So what I do is I'm gonna lift this up as high as I possibly can. So what we need to do is we need to see where the hole is for the lever right here, okay? Because this is probably gonna be your first hole. Sometimes there's like a little half circle back here. I don't know why, but whatever it is, you wanna make sure that if the water keeps going up, it's not gonna either come out of that half circle back here or out of the slot for the lever, right? So this one here, I can actually lift up like all the way this kit allows me to, which is definitely gonna be higher than what it was before. So we should have a stronger flush going on. Okay, so that part's awesome. Next, we're gonna take our fill valve here and get it in place. So locking ring is up, right? So we're gonna stick it on the stem, push it down. Okay, so you kind of see the angle I got this at. So right here is the front of the toilet. So this adjuster here is kind of 45 at the front of the toilet, and this little stem right here, which is where we attach the hose, that's kind of shooting straight across, okay? So that part looks good. Now height-wise, if we want to make this to fill all the way that we just raised this up to, this has got to be up kind of high too. So you can kind of just lift up the float, and the water, when it shuts off, is going to be just under the top of the float. Okay, so you can kind of guess where that's going to go. Now we need to lock the ring back. Okay. Make sure it's locked in right so you don't have a geyser when you turn the water on. Okay, now we have this hose here. To complete this, the hose is just going to slip over that little mini stem coming out right there, right? And then we're going to attach it. Then we're going to attach it to this clamp right here. Okay, and then you can see it's going to squirt right through here. That's pretty obvious. So we're going to attach it to the overflow tube so that it squirts inside. Now some of you be like, what the heck does that do? Well, what it does is it helps to fill up the bowl after you flush it, okay? And for the very few people who want to argue with me that they don't want to do that because they're trying to save every drop of water and they ignored everything I said about needing a strong flush, if you were to spin this around so it shoots into the tank area here, so it doesn't fill up the bowl, I guess that's where you're going to save every last drop of water, even though your flush is going to be weaker. Okay, now let's do the flapper. Flapper's pretty easy, and this one is an adjustable flapper. By spinning it around, it will either do the minimum flush, which is down here at 1, which I think you all understand that that's definitely not what I'm going for, or the maximum flush over here, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this little clip off. I hope I'm keeping the angle right for you guys. Okay, so we have it. All right, so we have the chain there. And then just like how we popped it off earlier, we're gonna push these little clips over those arms down here. Okay, of course, one of the harder things we had to do all day was just get this out of the packaging. All right, so this is an interesting unit right here, and it can separate right here. Okay, so we're just gonna yank that off the handle. Yay! All right, so we're taking the nut off, and again, this is left-handed thread, okay? So not righty-tighty. All right, this one here has a little kind of bushing, and that kind of is going to depend on your toilet. Okay, so it doesn't look like mine actually needs it, so I'm going to go ahead and take that little bushing off. Alright, we're just going to push it in here and put our nut on and snug it up. I will use a pair of pliers to kind of help snug this up a little bit. Now here is the inner arm. It's pretty cool because it's fairly adjustable. Alright, so we have our multiple points there to put the clip on there, but you can also push a button and stretch it out even further. And then this right here you can take and you can also adjust, okay, and get the right angle there. This one here is very tight. Honestly, might feel like you're gonna break it trying to adjust that. And on the packaging it says some force required. Okay, and then they're not kidding, because I really felt like I'm gonna break this, okay? It gets a little better after you've done it a few times. All right, so I'm gonna undo the locking ring and move that out of the way for now. And then that way we can put this in place. Now we want to take the handle on the outside here and hold it pretty level. And then we're gonna stick this in and lock it. Okay, that's too much. You don't want this to like go up past the lid when you go to flush it, right? That's gonna hit the top of the lid right there as it is. But the flush lever is like 95% of the way up when it does that, so that's good. All right. And then I think we can actually shorten this arm. And we're gonna put the chain on. Okay, let's tighten the chain up. Okay, you can see toilets can require a lot of fine adjustments to make them work right. People take that for granted. They just take a crap in the toilet and move on. But there's nothing really, most people don't consider what goes into making that work right. There we go, all right. So maybe you can see all right, the flapper, you know, lifts up all the way when I pull this up. So that's important. And there we go. So I think we have good working action here. So that this doesn't hit the fill valve, I think I will notch that in a little bit. Make sure that the flapper's range is still working right. Okay, now let's put the fill valve back in place. This is obviously going to hit the lever, so we're going to turn it a little bit more like that, and that's okay. Okay. Locking the ring there, okay? So we're testing it, we're making sure that nothing hits anything and everything has got clearance. Okay. There we go, that's a little bit better. This was rubbing the float when it was up. Okay, so nothing hits anything. And if you guys are wondering what's with this screw here, that's our fine adjustment screw. So if you need to go up and down on the float as small increments, that's what that is right there. Okay, now whether your toilet has been set or not, I generally like to start with the easy side and get it attached right here, okay? You don't necessarily have to. If the toilet's set in place, you can start on this side. But this one here, we're attaching it to the tube there for the fill valve. And these have wings on them, okay? So since everything is plastic and you have a rubber washer, this really should be a hand tighten, okay? Snug it up good, don't have to go crazy on it. If you're spinning your tube, then you never tightened up the fill valve nut tight enough, because you shouldn't be spinning the tube by doing this with hand. Okay, getting ready to set the toilet. Now I'll show you what I'm using this time. I normally just use a jumbo wax ring. And let me explain to you why I use the jumbo. Typically I'm doing it on a tile floor. And since the tile floor will be, you know, up around the toilet flange, makes the toilet flanges lower, I need that jumbo wax to properly fill it. Because when you set the toilet, you should feel it sit on the wax before it touches the floor. If you just go straight down and drops, the wax wasn't tall enough, okay? Now if you have a vinyl floor, and so your toilet flange is way up and taller than the floor, basically taller than the floor, then you can probably get away with a normal size wax ring. This one here is kind of a hybrid unit, which has wax in it, but then also is kind of waxless on the top part. So it's going to make that great wax seal against your flange. But on this part here, if you have kids that drop stuff down the toilet, so you end up having to take it off, you know, more than you should, having to lift it up to get stuff out, this way you don't have to constantly replace the wax ring. You can just lift it up and then set it back down. So we're gonna take the little white caps and their little washers and set them to the side. And then I got these bolts here that have the snap off location, so hopefully we can snap them off with ease and then put the white caps on. You got the two little clearish washers there to help hold the bolt up. That's what they do, is they help hold the bolt stand up, so when you set the toilet down, it's easier. We have the regular washers and the nuts, so we'll set all this to the side as well. Okay, now back to where we were. All right, we're gonna pull the plug out. Okay, we do want to make sure that the flange is very well secured to the floor, okay, because if it's not, I mean, the toilet's going to be rocking. It's just really that simple. Okay, so I guess we probably should put the bolts in first. I'll be completely honest, I have used some styles of these before. This might be a first time for me on this specific one. Okay, got the bolts in. We're going to put the plastic washers in place to hold it up. Okay, interesting. So there is a fatter hole and a skinnier hole in this one. I do have the thicker bolts, so we'll just do that. And we're lined up. Okay. Nice, everything's looking great. And since I don't think I need this, I'm gonna pull this off for now. So when I set the toilet, I should be able to feel resistance when I set it on that, and we'll see if that happens. Okay, before you set her down, now's a good time to make sure that you have no wax left underneath the side of the toilet, and that the bolt holes have no wax pushed through them, or you won't be able to see what you're doing. Okay, that didn't feel right at first. When I set it down, it seemed like I was stuck on something. So I guess it'll even fold down even more if it needs to. Okay, this particular toilet is really close to the wall over there. So I had to switch sides. All right, so we have our white caps, which we're still gonna put to the side, but we have their little washers, okay? And they generally say this side up. So we're gonna drop that on. We're gonna take the metal washer that came with the bolt, and then add the nut. And you might need some assistance on this because sometimes they spin. So I like taking a pair of vice grips, locking it up top here because we're going to snap that off anyways. And that way we can tighten her up. Okay, and a couple of tips here is make sure the washer stays centered while you're doing this and do both sides evenly, okay? And remember that this is ceramic, okay? So you can absolutely, if you just start torquing it down, or if you put like an impact on this to speed it up, cracking this and splitting the base will absolutely happen. And if you notice me, I'm holding the wrench way up here at the top of the neck so that I don't have a ton of leverage against it, okay? All right, now when you think you're starting to get snug here, you want to take the toilet and try to rock it and see how much movement it has. Okay, it really should sit pretty flat. Now, if you have a tile floor and the tile floor is not perfectly flat underneath the toilet, you might need little toilet shims, okay? They're little plastic or rubberized wedges that you literally just stick underneath there if there's a side that's wobbling because of the floor. It's really that simple. Okay, but we're pretty level here, and I think we're just going to double check and snug it up just a hair more. Notice where my finger is on the wrench. Okay, I think that's gonna call it good. these are snap-off bolts. They have little notches here, here, and here, which makes it easier to snap it off rather than having to cut it off with a hacksaw. Okay, and most of the time these work pretty good. They especially work good if one of your notches is right over your nut. Okay, so we're gonna take the vice grips and lock it in right over that. I'm gonna hold it here so I can make sure it's pivoting and bending. So I'm gonna kind of put some back force here and then bend it over on top like this. Okay. Okay, not the quick break I was hoping for. That's not what I was looking for, but it still worked. And we're gonna make sure that didn't loosen up in the process. Now the cap is gonna go over and click on. Now we need to hook up the other part of the supply line. And this is in a tight location, okay? So we're gonna start the knot by hand. Okay, when we go to finish this off, to snug it up, we wanna support the shutoff valve, okay? So it doesn't spin on us. And if it's on something else, you also don't wanna just torque it on accident. And then, okay, this is impossible. All right, I guess I'm gonna use the handle with my thumb to keep it from spinning. Now, this has a rubber washer in it, remember, so you don't have to go crazy. And if you do crazy, you'll probably ruin the rubber washer. Okay, now it's time to turn the water on and check everything out. A little air in there. All right, so we need to see, I'm sure that the overflow tube is not too high. We want to make sure that this shuts off at the right time. We want to make sure there's no leaks in between the tank and the bowl, and we want to make sure there's no leaks at the ground. Okay, so you want to feel around here where the tank and the bowl meet, and then the bolts on the underside. Okay, you want to make sure there's nothing dripping off of them. Okay, so everything around the tank and the bowl area is dry. I've also checked the supply line too while it was filling to make sure that both conductors there were dry. So far we're good all the way around. Now height-wise, we could go a hair higher with the water because it's not all the way up to the overflow tube. And actually I got a little bit of room on this, so I'm just gonna suck that up. I don't think I need to go any higher than that. So now we're gonna flush it to see how it flushes. And we're also gonna wash the floor down here. I know some people like to caulk their toilet to the floor. I typically don't. Reason being is if you're leaking here at your wax ring or your whatever seal you used, if there's no caulking here, you can see it. It should leak out all over the floor. It should come out. But if you've caulked the toilet all the way around, it's gonna keep the water and trap it underneath there. And you won't know that it's leaking until it's probably very too late. And here we go. You want to flush it more than one time to test it to make sure it's not leaking out from underneath here. 2 or 3 times should be good, and then you're good to go. And toilet seats can be very similar in how they install and also very different at the same time. I'm just going to slip this one back on. Now, if you want to see a better toilet install video or a full one, top right of your screen. Thanks again for hanging in here with me with this video. It was a little bit longer one, but that's why we have the chapters down there, so you can go wherever you need to and come back really easy, okay? I try to make this as complete and informative as possible. So if you need to rebuild your toilet, whether it's just one part or the whole stinking thing, you can do it, okay? I believe in you guys, you really can do it. Please share this video so you can help others do it as well. Please subscribe to our channel, hit that bell for notifications. Always constantly new content coming out, okay? It's pretty good stuff too, I think so. Hopefully I think so, because I shouldn't be making it then. Please check out our website, hundreds of more videos organized really, really well. And there's another video for you guys to enjoy. Thanks again.